All right. Thank you, Riley. How's everybody doing? Good? Last session of the day before we get to write a bowl. I saw that. That's awesome. Again, this is 5 things you should be doing right now. Not right now, because you're in the session, but later on. So this is either going to be really affirming for you, and you'll definitely be learning some things as well. So, hold on one second. There we are. All right. So let's get this started. Okay, so there's obviously my Twitter handle. You're going to see these slides also posted to that hashtag by tomorrow for sure, okay? But I'll post it as soon as I get back to my hotel room. But this is cool. My name is Paul, again, like Riley said. Chances are you guys are probably run the gamut. Let's just do, just kind of by a show of hands, who considers themselves a designer in the room. That's like half, a little more than half, because some people just don't raise their hands. And then like more developer. Maybe you're the developer. That's not even really a real word. But you're like, yeah, I'm a developer, but I could fake being a designer. Just like I fake being a developer sometimes. So that was like less, maybe 30%. And everybody else is our boss probably, I assume, like manager or something. So, but it's tricky because it kind of runs the gamut when you're talking about web design. You know, and we can get into the details just like with development, the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things. But in general, it's like the right way to do things is the way where you just get stuff done at the end of the day. I could really care less what your PSD file looks like or what any of your code looks like, honestly, half the time. As long as it works and the client's happy, then I'd say that's a job well done. So I don't want to major in the minors at the end of the day. So I'm not going to be doing that. Although I will be giving you some helpful pointers and tips and things you should be doing. It's really, I just want to do a good job for my clients at the end of the day. I don't want to get too fancy, but all I want to do is just like Paul Rand says, don't try to be original, just try to be good. If I want to be original, hey, I should have taken fine art or something. Nonetheless, I want to do a good job for people. That's the short of it. And that's why I'm going to cover 5 things. Starting out with just create using a grid. Okay, so there's the 5 things you need to be doing just to be a better designer. Create using a grid. Okay, this is going to help you when it comes to responsive design. All right, and this is something you learn in art school as well. So grids do organize content, as Captain Obvious is quoted with saying. I just put those words in his mouth since he's not a real person. But really, the foundations of design really started with roughly around the Industrial Revolution, sort of the modern graphic design era sort of started with the Industrial Revolution. And plenty of product being made. We, of course, had presses, typesetting things like you see here, and this is from 1884. Shows designs that were competing for attention at the end of the day. So they had to start to divide this all up according to sort of a grid layout, right? And this is kind of where graphic design started. It's like, okay, I want my magic snake oil to stand out over, the candle wax people, or whoever that is, right? But that's kind of where it all started. But it really hasn't really changed that much. And that's why I'm glad my art school education, a lot of the technical stuff can't be used today because I'm not making sites using frames or doing a lot of image maps so much anymore. But the fundamentals haven't changed. Okay, so we do things based on a grid, just like they've done 100 years ago. In fact, I'm going to show you guys this. This is the name, if you guys can read that, Wireframing. Okay, so this is just hardly even an extension, but I'll just jump out to, say, my page. It's actually already loaded back here, for instance. But you can go to any website, and it's just going to basically run some JavaScript, and it will show you the grid depending on how fast this network is. It'll divide up the page based on the grid that's being used. Okay? So that's what it will basically do, is it'll start to divide this up based on the grid that was being used here. All right? So just remember that name. Try it at home, because it'll kind of show you. You can go to CNN.com, go to any site, and you can see sort of the grid that was made to make up this particular site, for instance. All right? And also, even if I went to Twitter.com, and I'm not sure how that's going to turn out, but some of the design fundamentals start to kick in as well, because we have I can talk about sort of grid-based design, dividing everything amongst a grid, but we can also get into the golden ratio, which is more a graphic design thing, way of dividing up the screen. Okay. Golden ratio, do you guys know what that is? Yes, yeah, heard it. The short of it is like you don't really want to have three things that have all equal weight, because then it's all competing for your attention. And the golden ratio basically says, hey, here's your primary content, and then here's your secondary content, just like here. Oh, the main area is what I need to look at, and off to the left is that sort of sub-nav, all right? And that's really what the golden ratio shows you how to do. And you can see that all over the place, and it'll start to drive you mad, right? That's what it does. So we could take a look at some grid-based systems. If you're more of a CSS designer, you can jump in and you can use any one of these, a 960 grid system, golden grid, basically these sort of templates or code libraries that you can use to get you started right away with CSS. And I also have Photoshop there as well. Because actually what you can do, if I just jump in there really fast, this is what you'd normally do in Photoshop. Who uses Photoshop in here, by the way? Just to show hands. I love you guys. I want to take a picture. That's awesome. All right, it's good to see. So you open up your rulers, and you're like, I'm going to make a grid-based layout, and you start dragging out all these guides, right? At, certain intervals, roughly. And you really don't need to do that, because not only can you create by going File, New, you can pick any one of these sort of starting presets, so you can pick that 960 grid if you want to, which is what I did, but you could also go in here to view new guide layout. So rather than me dragging out all those guides, let's just go here, selecting that. Yes, I made a 2-column grid. I was so lazy, I didn't even drag out one ruler earlier today, one guide. I did that. I'm like, I don't even want to have to divide a number. But nonetheless, look, I can jump in and say, make an 8-column layout. It does that. A gutter of 20 pixels. I can jump in and add a margin too of 20 pixels if I want to as well. You guys get the idea. Just like that. Done, done, and done. And now I can just start designing and doing what I need to do. All right, and this is in Photoshop CC. And that's what you do is you'd start designing, dragging out content, and it's, of course, going to align right in there to those different grids here. Let me just jump in and just grab one of these. You guys know what's going to happen next. It'll snap to it. I'm going to undo this, actually, and I'm just going to draw something. And let's just pretend like this is my logo. I'll drag that out. And oftentimes I need to align things to this logo or this element or this picture, right? So you're sitting there trying to align things, and still you drag out a ruler to do that. Or what you could do is jump in and create a new guide from shape. So based on that shape, go ahead and add those guides. And I'm sorry that's kind of hard to see. I apologize for that. But all in all, it will give me those lines, okay? And you'll see it even more as well. So, in fact, let's make this darker. All right. So there's the line. Sorry about that. So it gives you those lines. We see that done. That looks great. And we can start to sort of, drag out various icons, do what we need to do right in here. And that's what you do is you start to, maybe make a couple of them, and maybe they're different sizes. Who knows what these are, right? And maybe you want to position these at a different width apart. So what do you guys do? You grab your little marquee tool, and you be like, okay, that's good. Let's go over here. Okay, I'm about that far off, and I'm going to move this one over. Use the marquee as a measuring tool. You don't need to do that. So let's just undo that one. And just to show you, just turn on Smart Guides. And those are those green lines you'll see pop up, okay? So this is going to help me align objects. So say, for instance, even out, and I'll just delete him. This guy, I'm just going to duplicate him. But as I drag him out, it says, okay, oh great, 36 pixels from his neighbor. Drag him out again. Okay, that's good, that's good. Oh, thank you very much. And it snaps into place, so it tells me how far that is away from its neighbor, just like that, okay? And you go on, and you have that alignment. In fact, if I even hold down the Command key, I can get the distance from the top, from the side, that sort of thing, right? So Smart Guides help me out a lot. This Properties panel, you can see how it's opened up, and it gives me those exact coordinates, right? It makes this a rounded, it's actually a rounded rectangle, and I can turn it into curved corners, all right? So that's just some simple things that I'm showing you right now as you start to create something based on a grid and start designing. All right, so let's move on. Okay, and that's what we do. We start to create things based on a grid, and then sort of your art school education kicks in here, where you take all the elements of design, order, variety, contrast, symmetry. It's all stuff I'm thinking about. Tension, is something touching? Balance, the scale of something. Texture, if there's a lot of space, right? Shape as well, and then you can get into color. I went through that really fast, but in general, that's what you're thinking as a designer. How can I use all of the elements of design to make a good layout, right? And that's what you do. You'd apply that all to that grid-based layout. This is just a quick example I'm going to show you guys, rather than designing more, because I only have like 45 minutes. I'll just play this little video. This is me in real time. I sped it up like 500%. But, so again, just taking a title, dropping it in, we have our main image. It's all based roughly on a grid, adding some subsequent elements. These are my secondary elements right below that, this little lion there. And then my subhead below that as well. So you can see I actually did sort of more of a golden ratio on that one. And I'm not even saying this is that great. I honestly did it in about 30 minutes and sped it down to into 1 minute. But the idea of having primary content, my secondary content based on that grid, and then you can see the main content below, right down here, and that content there. So we can start designing based on that grid, using some of those tips that I've showed you as well, and that's what I talked about. Layout guides, smart guides, linked assets. Do you guys know about linked assets? Let me show you. So this is what happens, guys. Let me just close this. So you'll have, say, for instance, a layout like I have here. And let's just get rid of that. You'll create a layout. Okay, and I can say, okay, that looks good. And might be a case where maybe I have a secondary layout, a different page, okay? And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and bring in the logo. And just to show you, you can go File, Place Linked. So you can place a linked file, right? So that file is going to be external of my PSD. In this case, it's going to be a logo, right? It's going to be a logo made in Illustrator. So I'll place it there. Give me 1 second. Jump out, grab that particular asset. Happens to be this logo Illustrator file. Placing it in there, and there it is. Move it into position, all that good stuff. Right? I could do the same thing for this artist page, right? Doing the same thing, placing it there, and it's going to be linked. So now anytime I change that particular file, it's going to change it across all of my PSDs. I don't have to worry about going into each one and updating it. So if I'm doing multiple layouts across multiple PSDs and I need to identify that one element, I can go ahead and change that. In fact, all I need to do is I can just double click on it. Boom, open it up. There it is. Let's just give it a stroke or change it in some way like that. Changing it to black with a white stroke around it. Coming back in here, it changes there. And then I go back in here and you can see it changes there as well, right? So think about doing that even for navigation. I can have my whole navigation in a separate PSD that I'm controlling, again, due to that external file, and it could be anywhere I want it to be. Cool. All right. Let me show you something else. Check this out, guys. All right, so just I'm gonna show you one more thing real fast. So internet's not cooperating. So you do need to you do need to have internet access if you're doing web design sometimes, guys. So overall, that's what I was going to do here because I don't know if you guys know this. This is a Creative Cloud folder. I don't want to go into all in depth about Creative Cloud, but the short of it is I could have all of everything in this particular folder is synced to Creative Cloud, okay? So it's going to be available to me everywhere on different desktops, on mobile devices, all that good stuff. But what I was going to show you is right here. It says collaborate. I can collaborate with someone else. So they'll get a little notification. It'll pop up and say, hey, Paul wants to collaborate with you on this this project. Here's the folder. You say yes, and it's going to sync that to their desktop, right? So they make changes, and that's going to show up on your desktop, okay? So imagine that workflow if they are the branding person or the illustrator. So what if they're the branding person that's in charge of that logo? They could change it, be halfway across the world, they'll change it there, and it's going to update your PSDs. And you can tell it, say, hey, update it because it's been changed, but they can change. You never have to talk to them because they're kind of weird and they're in a different time zone or whatever. Who knows? But hopefully you guys can kind of see the power of that. Just syncing the files. I didn't have to ask anybody for anything, right? And actually, I think it's because this is not turned on. I should probably, because that's taking up some bandwidth as well. But nonetheless, let's see if that, so yeah. All right, so let's move on. I get derailed fast. Those are linked assets. We want to make mistakes early, which that was my attempt at a joke, that slide. But we want to make mistakes early, all in all, when it comes to designing. So once we've done our design, we want to be able to get it approved as fast as possible, whether it's a wireframe or a more fleshed out prototype. I know prototyping has been talked about today, which is cool, but also just the ability to create a quick wireframe, okay? It could be a low-fidelity wireframe or more of a high-fidelity, fully baked design that is interactive. So with a wireframe, if you guys have done any wireframe, you know it just kind of catches issues early. So there's going to be less changes later on down the line. It just catches a lot of things a lot earlier, especially if your project is pretty large. Okay, but then even if you don't do it with a wireframe, it means, that's the technical term, a buttload of changes, right? But all in all, it's not that scientific. You guys know how beneficial a wireframe is. Hopefully you guys realize that, especially if it's a larger site. And there's just a bunch of various quotes that I've heard and some words that I've put in people's mouths as well. So, again, I don't really need to talk to you guys about the benefits of it. What I did want to show you is a couple things. Hold on, let's go back. Some of the wireframing tools you guys might be aware of. We have Axure, we have InVision app, we have marvelapp.com, and we have a couple others, okay? So I'm not sure who's here, by the way. Maybe one of these companies is. But what I typically use, and again, I work for Adobe, everybody. Surprise, surprise. That's why I have 2 Adobe products there, yeah. But I'm also telling you this because it's free. Adobe Comp CC, we just launched this last week. And what it allows you to do, guys, is just use your iPad and jump in. Let me just show you this real fast. Because again, it allows you to use gestures to create a layout. So that's a web layout. And if I want a picture to be, if I need a box for a picture, I just draw an X, and then that box appears. If I want a headline, I just draw a line and then a dot, and a headline appears, okay? Paragraph text, I could just draw multiple lines with a period, and it will add that. If I had time, I would show it to you guys on my iPad, but I encourage you guys to check out Adobe Comp CC. Using gestures to be able to quickly create like a wireframe or a comp, okay? It uses typekit fonts as well, so I can use those specific fonts, which is great. And add my own images wherever I want. And this is the cool part, guys. From there, you're thinking, what happens to it? Well, I can sync that to my desktop. And whether I'm using Photoshop or Illustrator or even InDesign, it's going to give you that layout in that program. So whatever you're using, if you're using Illustrator, it will give you those fonts and that layout all in Illustrator. So it's like app agnostic. It doesn't care what you use on your desktop, which I think that is way cool, by the way. How many of you guys have heard of Muse? Oh, yeah, a lot of you have. So more hands than usual, by the way. Just allows you to quickly And sure, some people, it's this whole idea, hey, you could go ahead and create a website without writing any code, which sounds kind of blasphemous. I get it, right? We could debate that all you want, but the short of it is, it's so easy to use Muse just to create a quick prototype. So I could jump in here and be like, hey, let's make that quick. Wait for it. It's thinking. It's like, whoa, you're going too fast. We know it's not that complex, but now it's waiting. So that's Muse. It's pretty impressive what it can do. You can quickly add pages, and there's your site. So let's just see what happened. Boom. Okay, so there it is. I actually clicked it a couple times. Maybe that's why it was waiting. My about page, my, portfolio, whatever. Contact. You guys get the idea. Oh, concept of a master page. Well, that's easy enough. Anything I put in here is going to propagate across all the pages. Real straightforward, guys. You guys know how all of this works. But really just being able to jump in and use a widget library as well. And it's thinking some more. But what I'm going to pull out from this widget library is a menu. So I can drag out a horizontal menu. And this is just a quick example. It gives me the names of those pages, and it's already linked up, right? So a lot of the stuff out of the box that's fully customizable is great when you're prototyping. Even you could keep it in this wireframe format or fully flesh out the design, and it's pretty darn awesome, right? So yeah, great for prototyping. Let's move on. And there's plenty of others out there, either desktop apps or in-browser apps as well. And I have a couple of them here. So I have Axure on my desktop, and they all work in a similar fashion to Muse, quite frankly. All right, so we can move on and talk about frameworks, guys. You guys are probably using a framework, hopefully, maybe not. Something like Bootstrap or UIKit, any sort of framework out there is going to help you get up and running faster. If it's using Bootstrap to even create a wireframe or prototype is going to help out a lot in general. Because quite frankly, I don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but it's totally up to you. At the end of the day, it's easier to use a framework than sort of create something from scratch, but it just depends on what your specific needs are, right? So in general, I definitely don't have a problem with it at all. So yeah, and at the end of the day, if the client's happy, then I'm happy. They're not really going to mind whether I've written all that code or not, right? They don't mind. Using web fonts, you guys know this, right? Of course we're using web fonts, all right? And we can usually go off and spend a whole hour talking about typography, but at the end of the day, we just need text that's legible. That's all we're talking about here. You know all of the various services, right? Typekit, Google Fonts, Font Squirrel. You can also sort of host your own fonts as well. I wanted to show you this real fast, and I'll wait till you get done taking a picture of that. When it comes to Google Fonts, for instance, let's see if I have it running. Sky Fonts. Monotype Sky Fonts, right? So there's basically this little app that runs right up here that will give you access on your desktop to various fonts. Because the problem is you're using web fonts for the web, and it's like that font exists on a server somewhere. But what happens if you don't have that font on your desktop? That's where something like Sky Fonts comes into play. It allows me to sync those fonts to my desktop and use them, right? It's that easy. Same thing for Typekit, by the way. If I jump in here and I go into fonts, okay, with Typekit fonts, and even if I'm in Photoshop, for instance, so right here, there's my text. I can add fonts from Typekit right up here. Click there. It's going to open up the browser. But this is the button I'm going to show you here in a second. Let's close that. Here's Typekit. You guys are all probably familiar with it, but again, it allows you to use web fonts, fonts that live on a server, which is great. But we can also sync fonts, go back, to my desktop. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but yeah, It's like, show me all the synced fonts. I'll select that. Show me all of the slab serif fonts with multiple weights. Just show me all of those. All right, and that's what it's doing now. It's showing me all those fonts. It will sort through them. You could find the font that you want. Let's go with any one of these. Let's go with Adrian text, and I can sync that to my desktop. So now I know for a fact that it exists within my typekit as well as will get synced to my desktop. And that's what is happening right now, is it's syncing that file right to my desktop. And it's going to be available to me, just like all these fonts are. So if I wanted to change that font to Lust Script, if I don't want this font to wait for it, I can jump in there and I can use any one of the typekit fonts that I have synced. In fact, show me all those synced typekit fonts right in here. And I can jump in, you can see it change below. I can pick whatever fonts I want, and this is going to be a web-safe font. A web-safe. It's a web font. So, just like that. Okay, and chances are, let's go beyond that, because you guys are probably doing that. I mean, I'm sure you are. But I like being able to sync those fonts to my desktop, and I felt compelled to add a comment about responsive typography, because I've seen some articles written on that, which is all about keeping text legible regardless of where it is. Okay, just like you're keeping your layout appropriate for the screen, we're keeping the fonts appropriate for the screen, whatever size it is. You guys using icon fonts at all? Yeah? Is anybody using icon fonts? So cool. Yeah, so it's awesome. It makes, honestly, integrating icons pretty easy. You kind of have somewhat of an issue potentially with the number of fonts that you get typically, right? But all in all, Font Awesome or Ico Moon is one as well. But basically, you're using this font, and rather than it being a font of a bunch of letters and numbers and symbols, it's going to be all icons, and we implement it that way. So it's going to be easy to change, so we can colorize it, and then we can also, it's going to be resolution independent roughly, right? Because it's going to work across, again, multiple screens. But you could find an icon font, and then you can even customize it as well. So you can take that, any type of whatever, ultimately get the TrueType font, and if you only need like maybe 20 icons, you can make your own custom font that has those 20 icons in it as well. Because we don't necessarily want to use all of them if we can get away with it. All right. So that is nice and easy to use all in all, right? Fonts, we're done that. We're using icon fonts. I can go to websites and show you how that's done, but you guys understand how implementing a font is, and then pointing to a specific letter. That's how you'd actually implement those. All right, so let's take a look at imagery. Okay, we're all using sort of photos and imagery to a certain degree. You're creating it in one of these apps, right? Illustrator, Sketch, Photoshop, Pixelmator, GIMP, I don't know, something. So you're either creating a bitmap, a raster, or a vector image. You know, there's a couple of different ones that will do both. So, vector, Sketch will do vector, Illustrator does vector, Photoshop does vector to a degree, right, which is great because it's going to be resolution independent. That's what we want. We want the SVG, right? We love SVG. It's great, right? Vector, awesome, easy to work with, and we can even manipulate it with JavaScript. And then we have our raster programs, which is going to be our JPEGs, things like that, right? And those are the apps that produce both of those. So if we take a look at two of these, oh, imagine that, Illustrator and Photoshop. You guys surprised? So let's just jump in there. I mean, you guys know how to create graphics. I don't need to show you how to, you know, put this layout together, for instance. In fact, before I go there, let me just show you Illustrator as well. Let me show you two things. Because I felt like I've jumped clear to this fully baked layout, right? And I want to show you guys this really fast. And again, it kind of depends on our internet connection. But if you have Creative Cloud, Who has Creative Cloud? Just by a show of hands. I gotta probably tell my boss and stuff like that. All right, cool. That's probably a question I should ask. Assets. You can go into Assets, Market, and these are a bunch of free assets you guys can use. You can scroll through all of this, and you'll find different layouts and all sorts of icons. You can scroll on it for days. You can see that, yes, there are user interfaces that you can access. Oh, wait, for free, right? Just give these to you for free, guys. You check those out. If you want something specific, you can just search on it. I don't know, music is what I'm searching on. These are a lot of times sort of SVG files and images that you could use for free. Royalty-free, you just can't turn around and sell them, right? But this is what you can easily access. And as soon as this loads, like if I want these headphones, check this out, guys. I'd love to have those headphones as part of my layout. Click in here, we can add it to Paul's library, okay? Selecting it, where does it go? I don't know if you guys are familiar with Creative Cloud libraries, but here's my Creative Cloud library right here. So colors, text styles, brushes, graphics. When it's ready, again, the connection's kind of slow, but it's going to load right into my graphics area right here, just like I've grabbed these images. So if I do want to use any one of these, like this picture frame, dragging it out, I can use it. And that came from Creative Cloud Market, right? Same thing for Illustrator. It has libraries in here as well. Opening that up, you'll see that same library. Oh, there's the headphones, guys. So let's just make a new file. Drop that in right there. There's my headphones. It's vector when it's in Illustrator, and that will be raster when it's in Photoshop, which I think is really cool. Depending on what you're using is what it will give you, right? So I can start to create what I want, and I'm just showing you don't have to draw it from scratch, but check this out, guys. From here, I can save this as SVG right here, so I'm going to select SVG, and I get numerous settings, whether you want to have linked image elements in it. As you guys know, SVG can do a lot. You can take a look at the code, or you can even preview it right here. And there's the headphones in SVG format, like scalable and all that fun stuff. All right? And you can also see the SVG code here, as well as I open that up. You'll see it right here. That's easy enough. I can copy and paste that and use it where I want to. If I happen to make a layout in Illustrator, I don't know if you guys are aware of, as we sort of get into the production phase of this design, I can create my layout in Illustrator. I can have text. I can have images. Here's I'm just pasting in some text, right? Some hipster ipsum, as it's called. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Just read it for a good laugh. It's pretty awesome. But anything you select in Illustrator, you can get the CSS properties of it. So I'm opening up the CSS properties, say, for this text right here, and if I would have changed it more, you can see the CSS that's available to me for an Illustrator element, right? I could take that, it could be a whole layout, and I can export that out. Export out that selected CSS to my desktop, right? Done and done. Right? It's not going to be perfect, right? It's machine-generated CSS, but it's more than what I had before, which was nothing, right? Jumping back in here. Let's get rid of that. There. I could do the same thing right in here, guys. Copy CSS for any layer in Photoshop. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but you can. Right? So I copy this. And just to do this quickly, there's my CSS for that specific layer. Cool? And yeah, I love it that it's Photoshop and it does everything exact, but I don't need to take it to the third decimal point necessarily, right? So you're going to have to do some cleanup, and quite frankly, it would be like, 5%, right? But Photoshop's great at making everything pixel perfect, and that's what it gives you, and you can go from there. But again, more than what I had before, which was nothing, right? Okay, so we're talking about getting content out of these layouts. Getting back to imagery, I wanted to actually kick out a lot of this imagery. And this is a pretty long page. There's more in here, guys. There's more layers, and just it's kind of a mess. Okay? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this generate feature that we have in Photoshop. Right, so what I can do, you'll notice right over here, it's like, why do I have this name .png? Well, you can go in and you can name any one of these layers. Wait for it. I'm having some technical difficulties. Make sure everybody understands that. I'm having technical difficulties here. Okay, so let's just go to this one. What is up? All right, so rb.png, it'll kick out a PNG, or rb.jpeg or .gif, it'll actually export out whatever suffix I give it. It's going to export out that file type. And what did I have to do? I had to name a layer .jpeg, right? And it will pick it out. I don't know why my keyboard isn't working, but that's kind of an issue too. Okay, there it is. It named it, just didn't refresh. Okay, so there it is. And I've done that to a lot of layers, but now all you need to do, rather than going to save for web, because again, for a complex layout, what do you guys do? You like select it, you probably select it and you copy it, right? Even for this background, this header Boykins. Man, this is not .jpeg. There, it worked. You know, you'll select it, you'll copy it, you'll open up a new page, you'll paste it, you'll mash a bunch of keys together to get saved for web. You'll change it to JPEG. Look at all these movements that I have to do, guys. This is like time wasted. I'm just going to put on my headphones because I got a lot of production work to do, and I picked out that one image, and I didn't even name it correctly. Or what you could do is close that one altogether, go back to this original layout, make sure that layer is named .jpeg, and then go File, Extract Assets. Okay, so yeah, write that down. Extract Assets. So I've named a bunch of the layers already, .jpeg. I can show you some shortcuts, because you can do some cool things. If I wanted that header Boykins to be half the size, I can do header Boykins, I could do 50% header Boykins.jpg, and it'll make it half the size. I can do 50% header Boykins.jpg, comma, header Boykins.jpg. So then I get the full version, and then I get half the size one. So you do that. I don't know how many characters. I think it's 128 characters. So you could remember that and write down those notes, or you could just jump in here to extract assets. Now, keep in mind, I've named a lot of those layers. That's why they're all here, guys. That's why they're already appearing, because they'll automatically appear on that side, and I'll just give you a second to kind of digest that. But there's all my layers. There's my header Boykins.jpg that I just named. Let's adjust the quality because it's a big image, right? Here's my rb.png file. Maybe I don't want that to be a PNG. Let's make it a JPEG, right? And there's the different types that you get. You just select what you want, and you'll be able to export it out. There's SVG. You guys get the idea. On down the line. Did I miss anyone else? Let's see. Like this logo, for instance. This dialog is still interactive. So if I just select this logo layer, I can add it just by clicking Add, and it adds it to the bottom. And let's make that an SVG as well, right? So it's, yeah, easy to work with. From there, I'll just go, actually, hold on one second. Like I said, rather than remembering what to name those layers, like 50%, blah, 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 check this out. I want 1/2 the size, boom. Extract everything at 1/2 the size. 1/4 of the size. Twice as big. 3 times as big. Right? Well, let's customize this. Click in here. We can say, hey, you know what? Dump all of those particular files in separate folders and get it squared away and give the suffix an appropriate suffix name as well. And oh, hey, by the way, we know you're indecisive when you design sometimes. Automatically generate those assets as you change those graphics. So if I change that header Boykins image in some way, then it will actually change all those graphics that are output as well. All right, let's zoom out. Let's just show you guys there's nothing on my desktop, by the way. There's a couple things. In fact, let's just throw those away. Nothing on my desktop. I'll click OK, extract, and it says, hey, where do you want to put it? Let's put it on your desktop. And it kicks out all of those images. Let's rush out there really fast. Click there. You can see it start to kick out all those graphics. Right? Is that pretty easy? Is that helpful? Yeah. She says yes. I'm quoting you. Yeah, we're winding down on time. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, great question. Can you do that to a group? The answer is yes. Because just like what I would do, say, with this main header, it could be .jpg. If it has a layer mask, if it's a 3D layer, if it's whatever, I've been able to throw everything at this. And even if there's a clipping mask, the one below it, we'll name that .jpg, it will do that clipping mask on it. It'll keep the mask, so it's going to look just like that. I don't have a clipping mask, but if I had some sort of texture and this you know, what do you call that? Search icon, whatever, had something, some sort of mask above it. Boom. So that will give me .jpg. Okay, so that's easy enough. It will do it to everything. I haven't found a case where it's wouldn't do it. I would make a lot of smart objects, because if we're making things twice the size, we want to make sure the smart object's going to adjust appropriately. But as you saw, you're able to pick out all those graphics as you've expected, you know, and there's everything, right? Even, you know, the SVGs, which those are white, but it picks out all of those. Cool? It's probably the biggest thing that we've done lately in Photoshop. And I know I'm harping on this a lot, but honestly, we've realized that a lot of people the majority of people who use Photoshop use it for layout design. Now, whether it's for a poster, you know, a brochure, a website layout, an app, that's what people are using it for. So we finally wised up and said, hey, you know what? Let's start pumping some features in there that are really going to benefit you guys, right? So that's why you're going to see even more in this area when it comes to sort of web design and layout design in Photoshop. And I didn't even get into something like text styles. Oh yeah, one more thing right in here real fast. So you've created this awesome library. You're like, okay, that's great. This is going to be my campaign library, whatever. I can collaborate. I can share it with someone else. So once I get all the icons set up, I can share it with someone else. You'll accept it. And then from there, once you accepted it, you'll have access to all of those icons and everything, right? I did not get into, I'm kind of winding down because I'm sure I'm running out of time. I wanted to show you real fast, like, 2 things that you can do with a PSD that doesn't require Photoshop, right? One of those is in Dreamweaver. Okay, so in Dreamweaver, okay, so again, this requires an internet access. But the short of it is, I can go to the Creative Cloud folder. I can basically go to this extract panel, and I can open up any PSD in this extract panel, right? And I can get all of the CSS from any one of those elements that I want from that PSD. There we go. Okay, finally. Here it is. Here's a layout. Opening that up, and I can get the CSS from any element on this page and paste it right into my layout right next to it. Okay? Does that make sense, even though it's not loading and we're seeing a white screen? Because he's saying I have 0 minutes. All right, so we'll give that 1 second, and I'm sorry some of the stuff is not quite loading up either. So I'm going to tweet this out either tonight or tomorrow morning. But even in a browser, guys, so again, you're working with the developers like, fine, I don't want any of that. Don't send me a PSD. I don't like you enough as it is. Just give me darn CSS or something like that, whatever. They don't want to open up Photoshop. It's fine. It's cool. But what you can do is with Creative Cloud, so if I viewed any one of these files, in this case, that one we were just looking at, view on website, and I can share this link with them, but I'm going to view this on the website. It's going to load up in a browser. It's going to give me a preview of that PSD, and I'm able to extract the CSS, the images, the text from that PSD in the browser, right? CSS extract from the browser. And this is what I'm going to finish with. You guys have any questions as we all patiently wait? We want to ride the bull. We want to ride the bull, and this is taking forever. So look, guys, extract right up here. That's the tab it's automatically going to open up in. They don't need to be a Creative Cloud member, so if you do save it, or if you do send it to someone, anyone can access this file, okay? But basically, it's rendering this file in the browser, and it's basically Photoshop running on servers is what's happening. So I'm able to get contents of that PSD that's running on a server and being able to extract those elements that way as well. Can't wait for it. Yeah, so does that make sense? I know we're not quite seeing it, but do you guys believe me? Because look, there's a CSS panel right here. I'm not lying to you. This isn't an image. This is like live stuff. I can access the layers. I can access the CSS for anything that I have selected. So as soon as that loads up, I would select it. You'd see the CSS. You can copy all the CSS. You could download the various assets as you select them. You just click the down arrow button, and it will download it into your downloads folder. You take anything you want from a PSD, all in the browser. Yeah? Have you guys seen this before? No? This is awesome. It's really cool. And again, you don't need to be a Creative Cloud member to access this stuff, which I don't know how we're getting paid as an Adobe employee. We're giving away everything. Most of the stuff I talked about is, yeah. All right, guys, that's still loading. I'm going to finish up with my slides as I kind of go into this. Talked about Creative Cloud Market, talked about Illustrator. Snap SVG is another sort of library that somebody made that allows you to create interactive SVGs. And I also wanted to play this. Hold on one second. Let me make sure my music is off. And I'll just kind of close out with this. Cutting crew, that's what I just muted. I know. Kind of bummed, aren't you? There are things you shouldn't be doing. If you are doing these, you should not be using fonts like this. Should have audio. Not enough audio is coming through. There we go. The pirates. Curls. Yeah, Comic Sans. That's how you drive people out of the room. Play something like this. Horrible font combinations. Or color combo. I'll use the gradient. Free clip art that's scary looking. Alright, don't do that. Going rogue with the bevel tool. Yeah, look at this. Just jumps out at you. I don't know if you read that last one. Hey, it says click. And not knowing when you click. That's all I have for you guys. So like, oh, you know what? Let's make sure we're not doing something. Sometimes not doing things is the best advice you can get. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to let you guys go. Yeah, I'm going to let you guys go. If you guys have questions, come on up. Otherwise, I guess I will see you guys later on the mechanical bull. Now let's go ahead and get that cutting crew. Where's cutting crew?